The Big 12 game of the week, Kansas Jayhawks at Texas Longhorns edition of the Big 12 Experience on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Game Time. Snag those tickets without stress. Use the promo code CFBX on your first purchase. Save $20. Download the Game Time app and use the promo code CFBX. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Play Underdog, play them, pick them, or in college or NFL, win 20 times in one game. Plus, every Sunday, they're giving away $100,000. Use promo code SGPN at Underdog Fantasy at a 100% deposit up to $500. And last but not least, we're brought to you by VSiN. Sign up now and save 40% off their football season special just when you use the promo code SGP. VSiN.com/subscribe. Use the promo code SGP. Welcome, everybody, back to the Big 12 College Experience, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Hey, man, we got our openers out of the way. We're on to week 2 in the Big 12, week 5 in the college football season, and we got a great one for you for the game of the week. The Jayhawks, back-to-back. I know it's not basketball season yet. They're back as our Big 12 game of the week on the gridiron. They're going down to that filthy place in Austin, Texas to take on the Texas Longhorns, but if you're wondering who you're listening to, I am Moneyline Mac, a.k.a. the former video coordinator for Bob Huggins and Frank Martin, and he joined each and every episode. He was born in Provo, Utah. They got a big Friday night game against the Bearcats of Cincinnati. Family name's Iowa, also 1-0 in the Big 12, but he lives in Morgantown, West Virginia, and you thought Texas Tech was going to get that done. Get that out of here. Rambling Rush, how about them Mountaineers? 1-0, baby.
Let's go. It's great. Guns down, baby. Watches the game out here in San Diego, visiting San Diego for a little bit. And I'll tell you what is quick side note about California. I went to the San Diego State, Boise State Aztecs game Friday night. I think I was the biggest Aztecs fan there, and I have no relationship to them there. Like, they're just kind of like calm, cool, collective. They're like, oh, yeah, football. Yeah, cool. Hey, go out there, do your best. I'm like screaming, run the ball. But hey, college football's back. Even if I have to bring it out to the West Coast, get people going. But excited to have Andy on today. We didn't get to go on last week, talk with the BYU Kansas preview. But hey, I guess now I'm cheering for Kansas, even though it's a tough one last week. But when we bring them, I look forward to bringing them on.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little recap of that BYU game because that was our game of the week last week. But man in the middle, third man in the box, batting in the 3-hole. These guys, always a family civil war in the Big 12, whether it's in Norman, Stillwater, Waco, Fort Worth, family everywhere, seeds spread among Orlando, Cincinnati. He is the Big 12 guru. Troy, what's going on, man?
It was a worrisome week. I know you guys know my buddy that I live with, Jim, is a Florida State fan. So we started off the afternoon getting blasted watching Florida State, and we went through a pack and a half of Marlboro Lights, just sitting there like, what the hell is going on? So that wasn't great. I'm trying to pay attention to Oklahoma on the side TV. Every time that I thought that they kind of were going to start rolling, they never did. So I have a very worrisome week for me. Not a lot of juice drinking as much as last week.
Yeah, as a guy that bet Clemson, pretty bitter about that loss, to be honest. They covered literally the entire game except the final score. Shout out to that goddamn kicker that missed that 29-yarder to cost me that
back
money
to grad
line
school,
winner.
baby.
Yeah, go back to fucking grad school at Furman or wherever you were. But before we bring on our guests from the Kansas Jayhawks, we got to talk about Game Time. Because, hey, if you're looking to go to Austin and watch those Jayhawks and Longhorns, buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fastest, easiest way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and a theater near you. With killer last-minute deals and best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hype and having fun. You don't got to worry about budgeting. You can wait all the way up to the last-minute rush. You did it this weekend, San Diego State, Padres. You got on that Game Time app, didn't you?
Yeah, it was great. Went to the Dodgers game. Went to LA for the weekend. That's an interesting place, but a conversation for another time. San Diego State game I just brought up, and then of course the Padres. Used Game Time for all of them. Knew where my seats were. Got great. It was awesome. It's the best ticket out there. Shout out Game Time.
Yes, shout out to Game Time. Get the images of your seat before you buy it, so you don't have obstructed view. You don't want to go Dan Snyder, old pulling one on you, putting you behind a pole, charging you $200 a goddamn seat at FedEx Field. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Download the Game Time app, create a code, CFBX, $20 off first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CFBX, $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, because it has a way to play alongside your favorite football team all season long. You can win 20 times your money in a single game by simply going 5 for 5 from now until October the 4th. So you got just under 10 days. Underdog is matching 100% deposit up to $500. $100,000 Sundays continue. Underdog Fantasy, total of $2 million prizes, $100,000 prizes this week, $10,000 for 10 people this week. New sweepstakes every week of the NFL season. Troy, you gonna be on who's your big underdog matchup this week? And we got a defense we want to pick on. Maybe back some UCF Knights guys against that Baylor defense.
Do we? Yeah, I guess you probably don't need too good of a quarterback to do that. I was thinking just stick with Dylan against Iowa State. I mean, they're not going to be able to keep up with that team, I don't think. It's not going to be an impressive win, but Iowa State's just not a great matchup this year for Oklahoma.
Yep, we shall.
And Dylan's been clutch on the props.
He has been clutch, and so is Jalon Daniels. So maybe we go Daniels back to the well against Texas. He's had their number. And when you use this sign-up code SGPN, Underdog will double your first deposit up to $500. Underdog Fantasy promo code SGPN. And we are back on the Big 12 College Experience talking Jayhawks, Longhorns, and welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, Andy Mitz from the Rock Chalk Podcast. Andy, the Big 12 basketball schedule was released today. We will talk about that another time, but no, we're not bringing you on to talk that. We're talking Jayhawk football back-to-back week. What's up, man? And welcome back.
Yeah, not only Jayhawk football, but ranked Jayhawk football. So
yes, ranked. Yes, indeed.
One of only two teams ranked. Kansas, we never thought we'd see that coming, and then Texas, who's leaving here. So obviously a big matchup this week, Andy. Let's rewind to last week. Your team, rightfully so, when BYU turns the ball over 3 times and can't establish a running game. Kansas absolutely deserved to win that game. My team, I grew up cheering for, the good old BYU Cougars. What about that game? Were there any what questions did you have in that game that got answered? Whether it was, hey, like we can shut down the run game against BYU. We're able to turn the ball over. We got the home field, involved. And were there also concerns that you're like, ooh, we got to button up against Texas in this area?
Well, I mean, start with the defensive line, right? Because I think that was what everybody was worried about coming into the year. And even with all the good performances that they had, like you played an Illinois team that had a great offensive line last year, but it looks like they probably have some issues coming into this year. You worried about like going up against BYU, the first team that has a very solid offensive line, a lot of older guys that are very mature and really know how to play the position the way that they need to. Was Kansas going to be able to get the kind of pressure? And they did. They got a ton of pressure on Keaton Slovis, like all game long, so much so that they got tons of pressure on him and then played off on the receivers to make it so that Keaton Slovis had to beat them with quick passes. And sure, he did that. He got a ton of yards on those quick passes, but you also saw, it took them 10, 11 plays to drive down the field. And so I think the fact that you can get that sort of pressure against good offensive linemen has to have you feeling pretty good about what this team can do. Obviously, Texas take that a step forward, but this Texas offensive line has had some struggles. They're like their biggest feather in their cap is the way that they played against Alabama, but we've now seen in the last 2 weeks, Alabama is probably not the Alabama that we're used to seeing. So while I still think that Texas is a very good team and is deservedly a favorite against the Jayhawks, I do wonder just whether they are correctly that much of a favorite, because the big wins that they had the one big win that they have has lost a little bit of that luster, because Alabama definitely looks way down this year compared to what they usually are. So, I mean, I still think that this is a game that you have a lot of questions. Can that defensive line keep it up? And then the other real question is, can the Kansas offensive line be able to stop the Kansas defensive line? I'm sorry, the Texas defensive line, because that's what I'm worried about. That's the part that caused Kansas problems last year in Lawrence. Now, granted, Jalon Daniels was just coming back from an injury. So like, it's not necessarily that, unreasonable to think that he is having some problems because he just came back from an injury and the offensive line was not really that great. And it doesn't help, of course, when they have B. John Robinson that can just run the ball down your throat. And so by the time you actually, try to build any kind of momentum, there's just nothing there because you barely ever run the field. So I think that Kansas had some issues last year with some injuries and some, kind of beat up. And Texas was really pissed off about the last trip down to Austin. That I don't really know that I have a ton of questions though about this team. Like, the offense is still just as good as usual. Like, the last I saw, if you look at the ratings for this Kansas defense, they're in the top 30, which is not something I thought I would see. Most of the rating systems that have them, still down in the 80s or 60s or whatever, is because it's like SP Plus, where it takes 5 years worth of data and weights it toward the, more recent stuff, but it still has all of that horrible data in the back that's weighing down how good this team has been. So defense looks phenomenal. And it's weird to be saying that the defense might actually be the stronger unit right now.
I would say the defense is the stronger unit just because of the expectations that were on the offense coming into the year and thinking you were going to get Jalon back, whether it was, missing a few weeks or right off the bat. But what I thought was the biggest thing, and I want to know your opinion on this, but right there in that third and fourth quarter, it looked like Jalon Daniels finally figured out the guy that he can count on when he's scrambling around or when he needs to just, throw it up and give somebody a chance. Luke Grimm looked awesome.
Yeah, Luke Grimm is I have a writer over at my website, Blue Wings Rising, who just absolutely loves Luke Grimm. Like, that is his guy. He talks about him every single chance that he gets. When I asked them all to pick a player to write about over the summer, to preview, immediately within 2 seconds, it's like Luke Grimm. That's the guy I'm talking about. So, but he has been a very reliable possession type receiver. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that he has been really good about finding holes. And so when Jalon Daniels has to scramble, Grimm is able to get into Jalon's field of vision, find a hole, and communicate, silently in a way that he either knows where to lead him to or, knows that he's just going to stick there and he can throw it right at him. The other thing that Jalon Daniels was really good, a lot of this, I think, is just the fact that Daniels has such good field vision. I actually made a comment during the game. I haven't seen a player with just such good field vision when he's scrambling since Patrick Mahomes playing at Texas Tech. Again, not saying he's Patrick Mahomes, because I get this every single time that, you make a comparison.
Can't do
one
right?
aspect, he looks at the field quite a bit, does a really good job of keeping his eyes downfield and finding guys when he's on the run, when you think that he should be, scrambling for his life, trying not to get tackled. And so that's where a lot of the scramble plays have really come from, is, he's able to extend the play with his legs, but he's still looking downfield, trying to find a way to get the ball down there. So what we also saw kind of in the second half of that last game was, and Lance Leipold actually talked about this in the post-game press conference, that against Nevada the week before, they had dialed back what they were going to do in terms of quarterback runs. They wanted to avoid Jalon Daniels taking a bunch of hits before conference play started. And they took a little bit of time, I think, to bring that back even in the BYU game. Second half, though, when you have Devin Neal and you have Daniel Highshaw, and then you have Jalon Daniels all running, you don't really need to pass. I saw a lot of people talk about the numbers that Jalon Daniels put up, only 130 yards with 3 touchdowns. That's because they were running like crazy. When you run for 221 yards, you don't really need to pass, because the entire point of it is you're trying to run the clock out at that point. Even though they had 23 less plays than BYU, time of possession was even. 30 minutes and 5 seconds for BYU, 29 minutes and 55 seconds for KU. And that was because they ran so much, kept that clock running, were able to keep the ball on the ground. did not have to worry about trying to, salt away the game because they were able to go ahead and just do it. So I think that this Kansas offense is just as electric as it's ever been. They just haven't really needed to show it in ways that we're a lot used to seeing it. So people are kind of wondering what's going on. But the defense has taken a huge leap forward. And that helps Jalon. That helps this offense to not have to be on the field, to not have that pressure of we have to go score every single time. Because I think a lot of people now know what Kansas is able to do, can find some ways to kind of disrupt the timing just a little bit. Kansas is not going to score every drive. I think last year you felt like they had to probably score every drive in order to win. This year, they can score on half the drives, and then the defense can make some big plays, and then they can go ahead and be in games at the end. I don't think KU is going to go blow everybody out the rest of the year, but I also don't think that they're going to get blown out at all the rest of the year.
Fair enough. Hey, Andy, let's rewind. November 13th, 2021. Jalon Daniels as a freshman. They go into Austin. They win 57-56 in one of the more electric games of the college football season to hit the over for everybody. And then also to rewind to 2019, Texas beats them 50-48. Why have the Jayhawks been kind of a thorn in the side for the Longhorns in Austin? I mean, that's the last two games when Kansas wasn't as good as they are right now currently, where they've just given Texas complete fits. They beat them in 2016 as well.
Yeah, so 2016 was in Lawrence, and that was a game that Charlie Strong was like already on his way out the door, essentially.
Yeah.
That was just like the nail in the coffin. Like, you knew that he was probably getting fired, and so the idea was he was supposed to win big against the Jayhawks and then win the next week and qualify for a bowl and maybe get another year. Instead, Kansas beat them at the end of the game, and he didn't even get on the plane back home. Like, that's how quickly he got fired. So, no, it was funny because I was really mad in 2020 when the game against Tom Herman's Texas Longhorns got COVID, like canceled for COVID twice, because I was making the running joke, which I still am convinced it wasn't a joke, was that Kansas was going to beat Texas again and get Tom Herman fired. And so they were going to get two coaches in a row fired.
Yeah.
So unfortunately we didn't get that distinction officially, but I'm still convinced that, they got rid of him because they just knew that they couldn't have him face Kansas again because he was going to get walloped. And of course, Sark got walloped, or not really walloped, but, Sark's first game against KU was that one where the defense couldn't do anything. And I think a lot of that was made out to be, Texas was losing a bunch of guys, and Texas was, dealing with a ton of like grief in the locker room, a lot of people that were resisting Sark's, like the way he wanted to build the program and everything. And I definitely think that there was some truth to that, but I think a lot of people overlooked a lot of the players on this Kansas roster. Jalon Daniels, I saw flashes of him in the COVID year. But the problem was that he had an offensive line that literally he was on the run within a second of the ball being snapped every single time. And when you don't have any time to sit there and think, we saw it with Keaton Slovis. When you don't have time to think, you're going to make mistakes. And so Kansas, when Daniels has been able to get more time, he's been able to show what he's able to do. And I think that was his coming out party. But it's actually kind of funny because if you really think about it, one of the other podcasts that covers KU that I listen to a lot made the point that Jalon Daniels hasn't really gotten the recognition for his role in building this program. Because if you really think about it, the win against Texas, what was the story everyone wanted to talk about? Jared Casey, guy that came out of nowhere. Yeah, it's a great story. You really want to talk about it. But, Jared Casey's the one that got all the commercials. Jalon Daniels, yeah, like he was known. He was a guy that people were talking about. But it was still kind of like, hey, what's going on here? We want to talk about Jared Casey. Then last year, even though Jalon Daniels got off to a really hot start in the first 5, games, a lot of the talk was about Lance Leipold, which, again, deservedly so. But then he gets injured, and Jalon Daniels doesn't really get talked about again until the Liberty Bowl, where, you can't ignore a 550 total yard, performance with a ton of touch. Like, he put on a performance that made people pay attention to him. Coming of the year, yes, he was the Big 12 Offensive Preseason Player of the Year. But I still think there's a lot of people that are underselling what he does. And so he has talked about how he wants to go out and make a name for himself. That's his goal this year, is to get people to pay attention to him. And the way to do that is obviously by having success at the team, not just what he does. Yeah. Because as we saw, with like Johnny Manziel, if that team was 6-6, then nobody would have cared about Texas A&M at all, or Manziel. So they have an internal expectation, KU does, or at least from what I've heard, of 9-3 this year. And I think a lot of people thought they were crazy when they heard that. But you look at what this team's done, and you look at what this team is, set up for, and who's on that schedule, and to be honest, 9-3 might be the floor now.
Yeah, especially with how weak this Big 12 is. Hey,
Yeah.
Troy, I think that was our prediction preseason, wasn't it?
I
It
was the one
mine,
going out.
9-3.
I was
Yeah.
the one going out on a saying I thought 8 wins was guaranteed, and that 9 was close to the floor. And people were like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah,
Well,
that was me too.
They don't
It's
even
funny
have
'cause-
Jalen in like top 7 or top 10 Heisman talk yet. And I understand that right now it's all, statistical based, and there might be one important win or something like that. But the disrespect is still there. Like you tell people they're going to win games now, they're still looking at you like you're crazy. Like, what? It's Kansas.
Right. You talk about like any guy that wins the Heisman has to have a Heisman moment. Like he has to have that game where he's the reason that they win against a big time opponent. This is Jalen's chance this week against Texas.
Yeah.
They have a good game and he shows out in this game. They're going to be talking about him the rest of the year. Even if Kansas loses to like Oklahoma and loses to Kansas State at the end, like they're still going to be talking about what Jalon Daniels did. And this is like the game to put himself on the map. Last year, I think I talked about this last week, but last year, January of 2021, I think it was 2021. Yeah. Well, anyway, January before last season, I was asked to give a bold prediction because I have a Big 12 podcast that I co-host with a great friend from our network. And, he asked me for a bold prediction, and my bold prediction was that Kansas was going to go bowling, and everybody laughed at me. And this was, before that season. So this was right after, that Texas game. And then you lost to TCU and you lost, I believe it was Texas Tech at the end of the year as well. And, I made that. And then all of a sudden they start out 5-0 and everyone's like, what the heck's going on? It's like, this is a team that is much improved. And I think they improved again this year coming into it. Last year, the big focus was get these guys stronger, get these guys bigger so that they're more like have that Big 12 physique. This year, coming into this year, it was get these guys faster so they can get to where they need to be. And you're seeing that in the defense, especially. Whereas before, guys would have to commit to breaks to try to jump routes or try to do a lot of this stuff. You had to commit to it really early in order to be able to get there in time. They're able to wait now and really get those breaks really late. You saw that with Melo Dotson almost returned the first pass from BYU, for a pick six. And then Kobe Bryant gets that, fumble on the next play. But then you start the second half too, and you get a, oh gosh, I feel really bad because now I just completely forgot who I was about to talk about. Let's see. Melo Dotson was in the first one. And then the second one was, I'm going to feel really bad because I was just talking about him on my podcast, but they had another opportunity to get OJ Burrows. He jumped a route. He had the ball in his hands. He was going to the end zone and he dropped it. And then 2 plays later, you get the double pick, the double tip six, basically, where 2 different players knocked it up for Kenny Logan. So this is a team that has a bunch of playmakers all around the place, and they're all playing, I think, a whole lot better than people are actually paying attention to.
Talk about this matchup a little bit, Andy. I mean, going into this isn't especially from the Kansas side of things, because last year, even when you played Texas, and Texas won pretty good there, but you were in a different position, right? Quarterback, it wasn't like Jalon Daniels in the first 5 games. But this matchup is the 2 ranked teams from the Big 12. There's been a whole culture shift, explaining it well. We got to get these guys bigger, then we got to get them faster. You got the right coaches. And now it's like, wow, these are the 2 favorites in the Big 12. You got Texas and Kansas. And Kansas is, as Ryan was saying, usually been a thorn in Texas's side. Like kind of just on paper and then with everything leading up to this point. How do you see this matchup playing out? And maybe not necessarily want to give your full predictions yet, but like playing out areas of maybe concern where Kansas may lack, areas where you're like, actually Kansas needs to take advantage and exploit this area against Texas. What do you see?
Well, I think regardless, Texas is going to get yards. Like they're going to get there. But what we have seen from this Texas team is that they're very inconsistent offensively. Quinn Ewers can have a absolutely phenomenal quarter and then go cold for 3 quarters. He can take forever to get going and then all of a sudden turn it on in the 4th quarter. He has entire games where they're really good or entire games where they're really like, you don't know what you're getting from Quinn Ewers. There's a reason that he is not one of the higher ranked QBs in the Big 12. I think right now he's like, if you go look at Pro Football Focus, I believe he's number 8 in the Big 12.
Yeah, because of his inconsistencies. Absolutely.
Right, because he's really good or he's really bad. Mm-hmm. And the really bad is bad enough that it really cuts into what he can do. This is not the same Texas team in terms of running either. Like I think this is a Texas team that their biggest strengths are on the offensive and defensive lines. And if those 2, units can dominate, then it allows them to do a lot of different things. The problem with that is that Kansas's defense, yes, they bring a ton of pressure, but they have a ton of playmakers in those linebacker and in the secondary positions. Like, you can get those quick passes, and I'm sure Kansas will give up plenty of those quick passes, but you're not going to be able to get, 50 yards a pop, for, 6 different plays in this game, because they have the guys that can chase you down. They have the guys that can get there and make it a lot more difficult. Instead, you're going to get, 5, 7, 8. You're going to string a whole bunch of those together. And then if you make a mistake, hey, guess what? There's a defender there to capitalize on it, take a big sack, force the fumble, do something to disrupt the drive. That's where Kansas has been most successful defensively. It's not bringing down the total yards. And I think that's why a lot of people still sleep on them. I think that they can do the same sort of thing against Texas. Alabama did a similar sort of thing to Texas for quite a while, and then all of a sudden Texas broke out. I think that that's where this game is going to be won or lost, is if Texas has, 5 plays of 40 yards or more, then Kansas is cooked, because, they're not going to be able to, like, they could probably match a lot of those on their offensive side, but that adds a whole lot of pressure to this defense. I do think that Kansas is going to get an opportunity to get a couple turnovers. The question is going to be, does Kansas turn the ball over themselves? If they can hold on to the ball, they've had a fumble issue, but I do think that that's what keeps this game close, is the fact that Kansas is probably going to win the turnover battle by 1 or 2. I wouldn't be shocked if they scored one of those. I just think this is going to be a very close game. I was shocked to see that I understand why the line came out at 16 to start, but I also, realize that a lot of that's because most people still don't take KU seriously, which is weird because they're ranked now. Like, it's a ranked team. Come on, pay attention.
Yeah.
Just a real quick one, even though I kind of jumped in before Rush. The fact that they're given 16 points is one of the easiest bets of all time. But I think it's going to be a pretty close game too. And that's going to come down to the whole world finally having to decide who's the better coach between Lance Leipold and Steve Sarkisian. And I know I'm going to get a biased answer on this one, and that's the one that I want. So
Look,
I don't think it's biased.
No, I really don't think it is. I mean, Sarkis had.
He is sober right now too. We have to add it, sober Sark. So that's a little bit better.
Well, I mean, the other thing too, though, is like Sark's had plenty of opportunities with very high level programs. Everywhere that he stepped in, it's been teams that haven't really been great when he stepped in, but they've had tons of talent. You look at what Lance Leipold's done. He's built, yes, Wisconsin Whitewater. He was part of building that program and took over, after it was already an established program. Sure, that's fine, but it's still D3 to have that kind of success. He goes to Buffalo and gets them turned around in 2 years. And then, jumps from Buffalo to Kansas. So he has shown the ability to coach up players. And I think the other thing too is if you flip Sark and Leipold, I don't think either of those guys are nearly as successful as Leipold is at Kansas. I don't think Sark could do with Kansas what Leipold's doing. And I don't think that Leipold's style would work well at Texas at all, because it's all about identifying guys that get overlooked, coaching them up, having those solid fundamentals, making sure that the system is adding things to the talent that you have, and going from there. Texas is all about flash. You go down there and you make a big scene, you show what you can do, you get yourself ready for the NFL draft. It's all about how can I make myself stand out and also, help the team win sometimes too. And so, I think that Sark is the perfect kind of coach for that kind of style, but it's going to be inconsistent. We see it with John Calipari at Memphis, for college basketball. You get a lot of those really young guys, and you're not building them that continuity in your system and allowing guys to develop in the system and then really understand what they're supposed to be doing. You're going to have a high variance. You're going to have really great years. You're going to have really bad years. And I think we've seen that from Texas time and time again. Kansas is at the point where they are building a consistent program. And I think it's more sustainable in the long term to not have, those gigantic, bottom drops out sort of thing. But it's going to take a lot longer to get there. And it's also going to be one of those things where, I think Kansas' ceiling from year in and year out, I could probably average, 8 wins a year. I think is reasonable, unless the Big 12, allows them opportunities to be much more competitive every single year and potentially win the conference, going 9-3. I think it's good though to see this team being able to get those consistent records and then have a year where they jump up and win 10 games and win the conference or something like that. I just think that Leipold is the much better coach for the Jayhawks. I think Sark is a better coach for a Texas style. But if you ask me which one I want, if I'm trying to build a program or if I'm not like a team that has, pretty much unlimited NIL money, I would want a guy like Leipold because he's able to adapt. He's able to build a program that can be consistent, even with a bunch of things outside of your control, really stepping in and causing problems. And I just don't think that Sark can do that.
Andy, you're a busy guy. Before we get out of here, obviously we asked you for your prediction last week. You were right. I believe you said Kansas would get a late cover, and they did so by winning by 10. I think we mentioned it. The line's it's at 16.5. It opened at 17.5. I bet it at 17.5, so I feel good about getting the better of the number. So I got it Sunday night. I said that was my first bet, 17.5 for the Jayhawks. I think it's inflated because Texas beat Alabama. But if you really pull back the curtain and look at what Texas has done since the Alabama game, they got doubled in time of possession by Wyoming. Wyoming had more yards than them with a backup quarterback. Peasley did not play, the same guy that beat Texas Tech. They were right there to win. Baylor, they blew out Baylor, but Baylor had almost 400 yards of offense. They just kept stalling in the red zone. And Baylor's a bad football team, especially a bad offensive team.
Right. Baylor is a team that is contending for like worst team in FBS.
They're horrible.
Like, that's how bad they are.
And Andy, we know who Texas has next week. And we know what that game is going to mean to both the Longhorn fan base and the Sooner fan base. This is literally the perfect time to play them. Nobody's giving you a shot. You're 17-point dogs. You're plus 575 on the money line. You give the Jayhawks a shot to pull the upset and shock the college football world. There's plenty of upsets this year.
Yeah, let me put it this way. When your head coach and Sark goes into his press conference and completely misunderstands the way that Kansas has been successful on the defensive line, you have to feel good about it. He talked about how the Kansas defensive line, brought in a whole bunch of transfers and all the guys that are really contributing are transfers. Somehow he completely missed the fact, Jeremy Robinson, who's been with this team for like 3 years and is the best. Like he doesn't have the most sacks, but he gets the most pressures consistently. You have Hayden Hatcher, who's come on really strong. Tommy Dunn Jr. Like you have guys that have been here and that have developed that are playing significant roles for this team. Sure, Austin Booker gets, big flash. Like Gage Keys has a sack. He comes in. He's a transfer guy. You have Patrick Joyner, who's a transfer guy, but he doesn't actually play as much as some of the other guys. They have been very successful in the transfer portal, grabbing the pieces they need, to have that kind of success. But that wouldn't be possible without the foundation that's been built by all of these guys that have been with the program for at least 3 years. So the fact that your head coach, for Texas is talking about like their defensive line is so successful because everybody is, a transfer, that they went and got a whole bunch of guys. Like, I think he meant it as a compliment, but what it really showed to me was that he doesn't understand actually how this team is successful. And maybe it's because he hadn't done much scouting yet. Maybe they're actually paying more attention to it now, but it just feels like they're overlooking what Kansas is able to do. They're going to assume that, hey, we're the number 3 team in the nation. We have all this talent. We can go ahead and line it up. I'm going to actually say it now because I've actually put this out there, but I actually think Kansas pulls off the upset. I don't think that it's like a cover. This is a team that is taking a lot of people by surprise. I think the defense is significantly better than anyone's giving them credit for. Like, I look at what they've done defensively. It's hard for me to not think that if I'm picking defenses, Kansas is probably in the top 15, 20. And take that with a offense that is still one of the best. Oh, and by the way, you look at the Kansas offensive line. They are ranked after the BYU game, third. I believe it's third in pass blocking efficiency, and 5th in run blocking efficiency. That's opponent adjusted. It might have changed a little bit because that might have been before the BYU numbers, but I can't imagine that BYU would have made it look worse. So this is an offensive line that plays really well. They don't have a ton of guys that you would look at and say, oh yeah, that's a NFL player or anything like that. But they have guys that understand the system, use leverage really well, and they have a monster blocking tight end in Jared Casey. I cannot count the number of times where I've seen a run to the outside that Jared Casey is not the lead blocker and blowing somebody up. So I think that Kansas has what it takes. I think that they're not going to back down. Texas is really not used to people really coming and punching them in the mouth because, like, the Wyoming game, they didn't play that one well, but it's not like Wyoming was lighting them up. Like, Wyoming got a lot of yards late in that game and was able to really kind of do a ton of things in that first half, but it was more because Texas was just screwing up. It wasn't because Wyoming was playing really well. So when you get a team like Kansas that can actually play very well, can be very efficient, I worry about, obviously, like, you have to worry about jumping off sides on a 4th and 4 or something like that, because this is a very aggressive defense. But I think this is a team that has all the pieces that they need to go and punch Texas in the mouth and then hold on for a win, much like they did a couple years ago.
Yeah, and if that game gets tight late, when there's Texas, we've seen it for years and years and years. They will pucker up, and just like the Cowboys did on Sunday in Arizona, if that thing is close in the fourth quarter, that favors the better quarterback, the better coach. And I'm with you. They just got to get to the fourth quarter, keep that thing around a 1-possession game. Hopefully they got the lead and close that thing out. So
plus, I got to be honest. I asked Bill Connolly over at ESPN, like, what would how much would SP Plus freak out if Kansas beat Texas this year? And the GIF response that I got was just absolutely phenomenal. So I really want to see it now, just to see how much, The other thing that doesn't get talked about, Kansas actually, according to SP Plus, has the number 1 ranked special teams unit in the nation, which, bringing in Sean Snyder from Kansas State guy.
K-Stater.
Oh man, it was so weird. Bill Snyder came to Lawrence to root on his son. Like, seeing him come to Kansas.
Did he wear Jayhawk gear?
No, he didn't wear Jayhawk gear. He did wear a blue jacket, but it was not Jayhawk gear.
Never.
I know, it was so weird to see it, but hey, you know what? I'll take it. But yeah, I mean, this Kansas team, they're due for a breakout. You win this game, and Kansas becomes the story of the year.
And Jalen's a Heisman candidate on Monday.
Absolutely.
So everybody, go check out Andy Mitz over at the Rock Chalk Podcast. Like you said, basketball season's around the corner. Kansas is going to be preseason number 1, best basketball league in America, hands down. Don't even give me Big East or any other league. It's not even close. Big 12 is loaded once again. Andy, pulling for you, plus 575 on the money line, and look forward to having you back in the future. Hoops right around the corner.
Yep, for sure. Thanks, guys.
Rock Chalk, horns
Thanks,
down,
Andy.
baby.
See you, horns down.
See you, man. Andy Mitz from the Rock Chalk Podcast. Great guy. Back-to-back weeks, man. I like his game plan on how they're going to pull the upset. We'll dive into the rest of the other 4 games on the slate on the other side. But first, we got to talk about VSiN, because we're brought to you by VSiN. Sign up now and save 40% off. Football season special when you use the promo code SGP. VSiN.com. So subscribe. Promo code SGP. Sean and Ryan are in a contest right now over at VSiN to show us who sells the most subscriptions. The winning show gets a $1,000 Super Bowl future. The best part is Ryan and Sean are going to cut a prize, or cut a piece of that prize if they get the win. They're going to win. And come on, this is SGPN. Go to VSiN.com/subscribe. Use the promo code SGP to sign up. Go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/VSiN and submit your proof of purchase. And if they win, you'll get to vote of what to use the $1,000 Super Bowl future on. And if it hits, you'll get paid an equal price of the action. How about that? So get over there, VSiN.com/subscribe. Use the promo code SGPN. Then sportsgamblingpodcast.com/VSiN to submit. And we're also brought to you by our favorite Hall of Fame bets. Win bigger by betting smarter in the NFL season with Hall of Fame Bet Sports Analytics Platform, player prop game line. Research NFL, NBA, MLB, and soccer with historical data. Enter a parlay, a revolutionary parlay to get every leg broken down. Sorts of all player rates, which players are hot and which ones get the best value. Stop betting in the dark. You got over 30,000 users researching the Hall of Fame bets. More intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOFBets.com. Use the promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Start researching and start winning today with Hall of Fame Bets. And we're back on the Big 12 College Experience, Big 12 Game of the Week. Let's go over to the other games. Friday night. We got a Friday night spotlight game, Rush. Here we go. Your boys.
There we go.
Line's a little short. I'm kind of surprised. Early look ahead or opened up at 2.5. Got up to 3 in some spots, but coming down to 1.5, over under 48.5. Rush, do you know if there's an injury or something with the Cougs maybe potentially that we're missing here?
So I've even seen this go down to 1 on some books. I haven't heard anything. As we know, in college football, you don't have to submit
No doubt.
Winningham injury reports and that sort of thing. But this is, I have BYU absolutely killing Cincy in this game, especially going out to Provo, coming off that Kansas loss, which, hey, appreciate the Kansas guy coming on the Rock Chalk podcast, but man, that's a game BYU should have won right there. 3 turnovers. Keaton looked phenomenal, like absolutely phenomenal. So maybe I won't say they should have won. That score was not a representation of the actual game itself, but you like to think they'd come back here, bounce back, and absolutely dominate Cincinnati. So I don't know what's going on with this line. Maybe they think Cincinnati's due too, but I don't think so. I'm still whatever's going for BYU here, especially the home field advantage alone's worth like
Troy,
double, like 6 points.
Yeah, the altitude. Troy, do you think they're getting caught up with the how good the Cincinnati D line is? Maybe.
Yeah, a little bit. Maybe some of that Oklahoma game, like we were talking about, there's probably in 90% of the timelines, that Cincinnati Oklahoma game is probably 20-13, maybe even 20-16 if they can score any of the times that they turn the ball over in the red zone.
Yeah.
But this is Emory Jones on the road. The line should never be going in Cincinnati's direction ever. Like, you can fade this line movement hard as fuck. This is Emory Jones looked bad at home. I guess he didn't look horrible, but when you need guys to succeed, like the difference between a quarterback and a bad quarterback is Jalon only throws for 160 or 180 yards, but he throws 3 touchdowns because you get down there into the red zone. It becomes a little more difficult. Count on your best player to make a play. Emory Jones is never going to do that.
I agree with you guys, man. And, I will say the line movement this year has not been as sharp as it has been in years past. To be honest, if you've been fading the line movement, I think you've actually been profitable, which means it's probably going to start swinging back the other way. These things always have a way of evening it out. But I know Cincinnati stats look good, but, man, Emory Jones is still Emory Jones. And then that altitude, like Rush said, in September, I think BYU should be able to pound them. That place is going to be on fire. This is a Big 12 opener, Rush.
Yeah, so I'm looking up right here. Deseret News is saying, big outlet out in Utah is saying that they could be shorthanded against Cincinnati in this game, which is kind of what we figured. But
okay,
dude, here's the thing: it's Emory Jones out in Provo Friday night. A lot of people may not know this. LDS, so twice a year they have what's called conference, where no one actually goes to church, but it's kind of from a national level, so to speak. And so that's why the game's Friday night and not Saturday, because it takes place over 2 days. And trust me, they're going to, before they have to sit down and watch church for 2 straight days, they're going to be riled up at that stadium. They're going to be going crazy. So yeah, I'm with you, Ryan. It definitely seems like in college, especially the mid-major level, but even some games like this in San BYU, the line movement, I think Vegas tries to be sharp on it, but you can only be so sharp at the amateur level. I'm in disagreement here. I'll look at alternative lines for BYU. I'm very confident about this game.
I was about to throw at least 2.5 out there. If it's going to keep moving the other way, you could definitely look alternate 2.5 on a field goal, just something that's kind of safe, maybe up your profits a little bit. But Jay Hill's going to make Emory Jones look so dumb. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm with you. We're all going to be on the Cougs. Check out our Thursday pick show for our final official picks. How far is Baylor falling? They're fucking 11.5-point dogs in at the bounce house. We thought this is a good spot for UCF in the preseason, but we didn't know Baylor would be a total dumpster fire. Talk about injured quarterbacks, Shapen and Plumlee. This seems like the common theme in this league.
Yeah, but the getting an injury apiece and getting to play Baylor, you would take that every day of the week. Because Sawyer, I don't even know if Sawyer Robinson's going to play. They just look so bad. They don't know what they want to do. The defense gives up right away as soon as the offense starts sputtering at all. They realize, oh my God, this is going downhill quick. That Long Island game, their only win of the year, was fucking embarrassing. And it's their only win of the year. So 11.5 is a lot for a backup quarterback, but in the bounce house, there's this this kind of has that like 45-14 written all over it.
Rush, Chapin did suit up for Texas, but he didn't play. Do you think there's any chance he plays? Or they might just be thrown in the towel?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's always a chance, and I don't know the transfer portal situation. I mean, I think those rules change every year, but I think when you get this early, these teams, especially with high expectations to start the season, they start off so bad. Anyone with potential eligibility, they're not going to want to ruin it to maybe move to a different team or at least not waste it this year. I do want to say I have public apology. I'll just say it right now for picking a Baylor Texas Tech Big 12 championship. However, like I said, that's preseason stuff. What do we say on the show? Preseason doesn't matter, right? It's actually when we get to the weeks and get in the game. So I think my picks are 33-1 parlay and everything else that we've done since that point. I've more than made people their money off of that. So to make up for any potential futures, but dang. Yeah, Baylor's no longer. I guess Baylor's that glue factory horse we were scared of all along, Troy. So
Elmer's.
Yeah, this is it's straight to Elmer. It may not even be Elmer's. It may be like the dollar store glue.
I don't know how many people. I mean, I'm sure the people remember back in the day covering your desk in glue and like peeling it off the whole thing. You would do that, and then they would give you like whipped cream to wash your desk on the last day of like third grade. There's about to be a lot of third graders rubbing some Baylor around.
No kidding, man.
From another quarterback injury to another one, we go to Lubbock. Tyler Shuck's out. Donovan Smith's revenge game. Dana Holgerson revenge game. This line actually just dropped to 9. I heard Morton is banged up for Texas Tech, so maybe get a little third string. I mean, I can't remember this league ever being this banged up at the quarterback position. Yeah, I mean, you got West Virginia. We'll get to them in a minute. It's everybody.
Well, Ryan, I think you're even seeing this in the NFL now. It's the problem is no one wants to hit in preseason anymore, so no one conditions their body. Like, people forget, oh, we got to save him for the season. Yeah, you get those injuries once in a while. It's like, oh, the star player goes down, he's out for the season. But then because they don't condition themselves in the first, the training camps and stuff, you get an Aaron Rodgers or you get name any quarterback in the Big 12 right now. So at least that's my take on it. I think we've gotten so soft. We're like, oh, can't have this, can't have that. And then you actually get to the season and this happens. So, but yeah, this game, I will say, I want to give Morton credit. He actually looked pretty good, and he was pretty decent last year. He actually might be better than Shuck. But if he's a little banged up, then that's a lot. I mean, even if it's 9-10 points, that's a lot of points. And you got to think the Donovan Smith, Dana revenge angle is going to be, Dana's getting these guys fired up for this game, and then they got a bye in West Virginia. So I think from the West Virginia fan standpoint, I'm actually want Houston to pull this out, but that's a lot of points for Texas Tech.
And I will say, Troy, this has been last year, Texas Tech won by 3. So I know they weren't in the same league. This has been a close game in years past, and they've talked about Houston, how much this game means to them.
Well, the biggest issue with Houston has been their offense doesn't really operate that well, and definitely not that consistently. And then, in the games where the offense has even been able to do a little bit, it gives their defense enough of a rest. But when they go out there and they try to run quick and punt the ball after a minute and a half or 2 minutes of possession, the defense starts to get torched. I mean, 10 points is just way too much, especially knowing that, Houston has trouble scoring. Texas Tech is going to have 2 banged up quarterbacks. This could be just like that UTSA game. This one could be 17-14 or like 21-17 or something like that. I would definitely take the points as long as, even if it's at 9, that's still a little bit too high. But I wanted to mention something else about the quarterback injuries. I think they're occurring because we went so far in the direction of the rules to give the outside offensive players the advantage with pass interferences and that everybody shifted their focus to getting, supremely physical defensive edge rushers and guys that can both rush and plug up the middle. And they're going to have to stop calling holding, or quarterbacks are just going to get rocked. Like, they're going to have to be a little bit more liberal with what they allow to go holding wise, because
good point.
If you call holding as tight as you do, and you've got nobody's blocking Dante Carleone without fucking hugging him. So if you let that guy come right up the middle and you're worried about, somebody kind of grabbing the jersey on the inside of their body, guys are going to get slapped and they're going to get hurt. And, now guys are trying to make more plays on the outside. They're not conditioned to game speed. The spring game doesn't mean anything. Nobody's fighting for spots unless it's like the 20th guy on the starting roster. You don't have quarterbacks out there going head to head with any real chance of.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be, it's definitely the next evolution is you got to have 2 or 3 quarterbacks on the roster that can all run the system.
Stay tuned. This game just dropped to 8 now too. So there's clearly an injury.
They're listening to us.
Yeah, no doubt. So we're moving the market from one injury to this one doesn't really have an injury. This had a gambling scandal. Quietly, Rocco Beck for the Iowa State Cyclones is getting better and better. They had the big flu deal at Ohio where they had all those guys out. Bounced back nicely against Oklahoma State. Gundy did play one quarterback. He played Bowman finally. Bowman actually wasn't that bad, to be honest. He scored 27 points. Troy, I'll go right to you on this one. Iowa State's been the kryptonite, man. This is still a look ahead. I'm anticipating a tight game here.
It's Norman. Maybe you can wait on the line to get down to like 18.5 or 17.5 if it moves anywhere in that direction. But Rocco Becht has looked significantly better than anybody expected. And the only problem is Dylan Gabriel has looked as good as everybody's expected. And with this game being in Norman, they can't use the slow grass and kind of control the clock. I think I'm thinking Oklahoma even covers at 20.
Even with Texas on deck?
Even with Texas on deck, for sure.
So the history of this rivalry or matchup, Iowa State's beat them. In the last 5 games, 14 points, 7, 6, 7, 1. So Campbell's had their
I just don't
here.
think the teams are nearly as comparable this year.
I agree.
The talent difference is significantly different than before. And that's never been, Matt Campbell's strength, but with everything going on, and again, I think it's the league set up Oklahoma for this as like a thank you in their last year. So
what do you think, Rush?
I agree. I think Iowa State they'll give teams trouble when they're home, but because of just the limitations and everything that happened in the offseason, I think when they go on the road, it's just not going to be good. And I don't think Oklahoma. I know Red River's around the corner, but I actually think from a Texas perspective, that's a bigger impact when you have to focus for Kansas and then you have Oklahoma on deck. This one may have a close first half. I could see it. Iowa State covering in the first half, then I could see Oklahoma the last 30 minutes just being like, all right, let's get serious, let's grind this out, and we got Texas next week, and then they end up covering. So hey, we got an SEC guy in the chat.
Who's that?
Michael Park. Hook
there
on.
you go.
Oklahoma covers.
Oh yeah, he's riding all the Red River. Go Cyclones and Jayhawks. Moving along. Oh, get the fuck out of here with this number again. They just keep on disrespecting us. Texas Tech laying 6 at Morgantown. Get that shit out of here. Get this number out of here. West Virginia TCU is always a close game. I don't know what it is. Neil's had their number. I would say, even though Garrett Green was available on Saturday, this line is saying maybe Nico's going to get the start again here, Russ. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think a Garrett Green line would be worth at least a field goal. So it'd probably at least go down to 9.5. Historically, we've done really well against TCU, especially in Fort Worth. Neil Brown lost the game last year, couldn't get out of his own way, but he's finally not getting in his own way. Occasionally he'll try to. Don't get me wrong. There'll be one play a game where it's like, oh, Neil wants to go back.
Don't jinx it, Rush.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm with you. So the way I see this game, I'd probably continue with Nico here. I mean, hell, he's not really giving you a reason to take him out. He looked really good last week. He in the terrible, shitty conditions, he made some great passes that receivers just could not hold on to the ball. Like his statistics line's not as what it should have been, right? I could see this even if we lose this game going into the bye, then having Houston on Thursday night, slip Garrett Green back in there. I would say that if Garrett Green's available, I would prefer him over Nico, but I don't think we're necessarily less capable because Nico's in there. I think Nico's a great backup to have, and I think he could be a great quarterback to potentially lead this team one day. But yeah, that 12.5 is probably a Nico line.
I don't think you need to look at the money line on this one, to be completely honest. Like, that's not me ruling out West Virginia as a chance to win. That's just me saying, I don't know if it's going to happen in Fort Worth, but at 12.5 points, you have to take that. I mean, this is a touchdown game.
Yeah.
Like, this is a touchdown game that a fumble completely ruins and Neil Brown looks like a genius or something like that. But it is funny. Neil Brown hasn't tripped himself up yet. He's like the dog that just learned not to chase his tail. And every now and then he'll do like the, like look back at it, but he won't bite it. He won't go for it. He's like, no, that'll hurt.
Was a little history. West Virginia's won 4 out of 5. TCU with the backdoor covers last year. That game was tied with like 4 minutes left. And then TCU got a late touchdown to cover the number. Neil Brown's 3-1. Michael Parks in the chat, bro. West Virginia ain't beating the Frogs. You know, I've been hearing a lot in the preseason. I said they'd be 4-1. Everybody said they're not going to beat Pitt. They're not going to beat Texas Tech. Well, here we are, 3-1, and we'll see what happens on Saturday. All I know is my Mountaineers have been shutting up a lot of people. We'll see what happens on Saturday night. Nobody giving them a shot once again. That's all I'm going to say.
We'll take it.
This team can control the line of scrimmage. I don't think TCU could stop the run. I don't think they could stop this rushing attack. This is going to be a game. That's all I'm saying.
If any team has a shot, it's the team that has the mascot with the mullet and beard and a literal musket. Like, they always have an actual shot. And the fans actually always have an actual shot too. Like, at any point in time, the fans would pull out like, oh yeah, I got this thing here. You want some moonshine?
And TCU's atmosphere sucks that's kind of a wine and cheese crowd. I'm for a team that's coming off the national championship. I was so disappointed in their atmosphere against Colorado. That was not hostile at all. Other than
we've already played at Penn State too.
For you guys, everybody's a wine and cheese crowd. You're West Virginia.
That's fair.
Yeah, too. They don't drink moonshine, do keg stands.
You guys got like the closest thing to wine in Morgantown is whatever your neighbor's making in his bathtub every weekend.
we got fucking 90-year-olds doing keg stands before the Pitt game. You thought we were gonna lose that game? Get the fuck out of here. All right, let's close it out. We'll pick these games officially on Thursday. But I can already tell you, the Mountaineers will be the dog plus 350. Let's move along. Rush, lead it off with your power rankings. Go 14-1. I got your little thing right there. Boom.
14-1. So, unfortunately, it kills me that I have to do this. But when you lose to Texas State and just not look good, I'm sorry, Baylor. Maybe you get one last chance this week to at least cover against UCF, but it's not looking too great. Number 13, I have Cincinnati, Emory Jones on the road. Enough said. 13, Oklahoma State. Bowman didn't look bad, but there's just still so many questions there. I have my concerns. 11, Houston. We'll see what they do against Texas Tech this week. 10, Iowa State. They did a good job grinding it out, and that's not a place I want to play at. I'm glad West Virginia doesn't have to go to Ames this year. What are we at? What did I do? 14. Sorry, but list is a little cute. Next up, Texas Tech. I still have a little faith in them, like they could, but they're kind of going into Baylor territory.
They're now the dark horse. Baylor's the dead horse. They're now your dark horse.
Yeah, man, we're talking more of that like chestnut type horse, right, Troy? Not even like the full like black stallion, just a nice chestnut. Next, BYU. Listen, BYU's not a bad team. They got to get a little healthy. They got to figure out their running game. But if they don't turn out the ball over, Keaton Slovis looked really good against Kansas last week. And Kansas, when they have 2 defensive touchdowns, I mean, that you can prevent those moving forward in the future. Next, UCF we'll see what happens with Plumlee. That's kind of why I have them a little lower than what they could be. But until we have that question answered, I'm sticking them in the middle. Next up, WVU, baby. Let's keep this train rolling from 14th to 6th, man. Feels great. Next up, TCU. Trust in the climb. Climbing up the ranks, keep trusting the club. Next up, TCU. Defense has a lot of questions. until West Virginia could beat them this week, and then we'll switcheroo. But I mean, they are the national runner-ups, and until people kind of start taking them off the throne, we'll keep them at 5. 4, I have Kansas State. Can Will Howard stay healthy? That's kind of the similar question I have to UCF. Is trust me, if Will Howard's healthy and stuff, I'll move him up the list higher. But need to know the availability of the quarterback there. Number 3, OU. Not for right now. We'll leave them there. We'll see how they do against Iowa State. It's until proven otherwise, we'll leave them there at number 3. But I could see that falling pretty quickly. 2, Kansas. Hey, they're rolling, especially if they beat Texas this week. And unfortunately, I got to put Texas Horns down first. Until as much as I don't want them to win, until proven otherwise, you got to keep them at number 1. They did beat Alabama. They've played pretty decent. So this Kansas-Texas game will answer a lot of questions for us. So there you go. The official power rankings, boys.
There you go. Troy, you're on the clock.
I was going to say, I have a feeling a lot of these are going to be kind of similar. Baylor is obviously in the poop chute. They are very, very bad. And I don't see any way that they can make themselves any better, specifically like in the short term. They're just going to be grinding for 3 wins. They might win one more game. I actually have Oklahoma State at 13th too, because Alan Bowman actually looked okay and they still got their ass whooped. So even if you get that average, slightly above average quarterback play, they're still having issues. And I mean, you could almost tell that right off the bat that they were much slower of a team than people expected. I have Houston and Iowa State both at that 12-11 spot. I think they're kind of interchangeable. They have issues on offense. Every now and then they'll have a few drives that get them rolling, and that gives them a chance to win. I do think Iowa State's slightly better, but it's week to week, and Dana will throw a stinker out and then have a gem of a game in Lubbock or something like that. So yeah. I with everything that's going on in Ames, I still think that they're slightly a little bit lower than they could be. Right above that, I have Cincinnati. I think the defense for them is going to give them a chance to get more than 2 league wins. They might get a third. Emory Jones is an issue, though. These away games
issue,
12 are going to be rough for Emory Jones.
Yeah.
Right above that, I have Texas Tech. A couple of quarterback injuries kind of bumped them down below the teams that I kind of ranked them around if we were to do any kind of a tier thought or something like that. I think they have an okay chance of turning it around, though. They have had a tough schedule, and you should kind of take the lower ranking with a grain of salt. If there's a chance, they finish their season with a really, really tough schedule.
Yes, that's why they're in trouble, man. They remember they backloaded that schedule, them and TCU. Yeah.
And then right above that, I have BYU. I have kind of BYU and UCF at an interchangeable spot right now with the unknown of John Reese Plumlee. But if he plays, I would have UCF up there even with Kansas State when I get to them. But Jay Hill's BYU defense is also going to give them a chance to frustrate some quarterbacks. Even if it is guys Jalon looked okay. He made the plays that he needed to. They couldn't really stop the run, but they're going to have an easier time stopping the run against Oklahoma at home and forcing Dillon to scramble around and maybe make some mistakes. So I could also see BYU being a team that maybe finishes more in that top 5 power ranking area. So it goes BYU, UCF, and then I have WVU right there. Moving on up, the climb seems to be working. I would almost think that not having Green has made it such a simple offense that Neil Brown can't bite his tail. He knows the option's not even there. We have to stick to what we're already doing. And that's what's winning them games. And we're going to continue to harp on it. So if they keep that up, I have TCU right above them. They will obviously switch if they're able to win that game. Even if it's only a 3-point game on the road, I would still have them at pretty much equal team composition and makeup. And then the top 4 starts with K-State. didn't really like that loss to Missouri. I mean, I know Missouri's playing okay, and they were kind of one of the national dark horse picks, but I really expected K-State to be a little bit more successful running the ball. And if they have any issues with that, everything else kind of falls apart. So I have them at that 4 spot right now. We'll see if Will's actually banged up or if he can kind of right the ship. I also have Oklahoma at 3. I think you can't move them down. The offense has looked good enough that they're gonna have a chance to win all of these games, even if they're giving up yards. They might slip up and they might not stay in that top 3, but for now, we'll see what happens. I mean, they get Texas in 2 weeks. They've got a chance to move up pretty quick. Because Rush put Texas number 1, I'm putting them at number 2. And rightfully so, because I have Kansas at 1, and I was on Kansas from day one, hoping that the win this weekend could really solidify it, but it's down in Austin. It's going to be a tough game. If Kansas is able to pull that off, that's the real deal team.
Oh, yeah. All righty. I'll dive right into mine. 14, I mean, Baylor. I don't think you can really make a case for anybody else. 13, I hate to say it, I got Oklahoma State because of that loss, South Alabama. But I do think Gundy has a chance to turn it around a little bit out of the bye. I think they found some things in that Iowa State game. I'll trust the coaching there out of the bye. 12, Houston, up and down. Same with Cincinnati. I got them at 11. Both teams, I don't trust the quarterback position. Iowa State at 10, I think that they're starting to find themselves a little bit, playing better football. Number 9, Texas Tech. I guess they could get back in the race, but with the backup quarterback Morton, he may be banged up. If they get to the 3rd string, I know they pulled it off last year. It's going to be hard to duplicate. 8, BYU. Got to see some more from that offense, a little more consistency. 7, UCF, even though UCF is probably the hardest one to gauge because with Plumlee, they're a top 4 or 5 team. Just like you guys said, West Virginia at number 6, by far the most underrated team, most hated team in the league from a national media narrative standpoint. It's ugly, I get it, but hey, they're going to just run the shit out of the ball right down your throat, and you got to stop it. 5, TCU, kind of ride the ship after that Colorado debacle. 4, I actually differed here. I went Kansas. I want to see it just against one of the top teams. I like the offense, but I just want to see it against a top-tier team. K-State, I'm not going to overreact to the Missouri loss. I know that was disappointing, but Will Howard was banged up. They're starting to roll now that they got back into Big 12 play. It's what they always do. Lose that game in the non-con and then start rolling. 2, Oklahoma, undefeated. And, of course, we got to go Texas at number 1 just so that we can jinx them coming up this week. That's what they do. And I saw Michael in the chat when the Big Brothers leave. Big Brothers haven't made it to Dallas in the last couple of years, so I don't know what Big Brothers you're talking. You talking about Baylor, Oklahoma State, or are you talking TCU, K-State? I've watched the Big 12 championship the last couple of years. I ain't seen those 2 schools you're talking about, so a lot of football to be played. Go ahead.
We do have to mention that Kansas and Texas aren't the only 2 ranked schools. Oklahoma is number 14. They are still undefeated and ranked. They are. Yeah, they're solid. But, we'll see. We'll see if Venables won't shit himself just like last year. A lot of football to be played. Russ, let's get out of here. We'll be back Thursday with our picks edition. Tell everybody where to find you and all your good work, my man.
At Rambling Rush on Twitter and Instagram. And for the West Virginia side of things, check out Ryan and me on the Ryan and Rush Show. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Appreciate all the support, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, you guys can find me on the X at Troy Chewning, just the full name, TroyChewning, and pay attention to some of the main network, just the SGPN reaction videos on Sunday nights for the NFL. I've been calling in on the show on Twitter Spaces just to dick on Dak Prescott because I fucking hate that guy. And when I called in first, I'm DC Sports Messiah on Twitter, so they're assuming I wanted to talk about Commanders, and I had to tell them that
who are the Commanders?
The Redskins. I had to tell them I was named after Troy Aikman, and they thought I was about to go off on the Cowboys being good. And when I went the other way, man, the Eagles fans were loving it. They were like, "Holy crap, a realistic Cowboys fan!" So yeah, if I'm YouTube, all the other channels, I'm getting pretty involved in the stuff. So.
Hey, all I know is the Cowboys were unbeatable last week. This week, the Longhorns are unbeatable. What could go wrong? Horns down and they let it ride. See everybody Thursday.
Let it ride, baby.